So UFC Fight Night Tampa, Covington versus Buckley goes down this weekend, which means that it is time for me to give my full card breakdowns and predictions. I will go ahead and put the time codes down below, so if there's specific fights you want to hear me discuss, there you go. But I'm going to make bold predictions, right? I started this for my, full card predictions video for UFC 310. I'm going to pick who I think the winner is, if there's going to be a finish, or if it's going to be by decision. And if there is a finish, I'm going to be bold and pick the round. So we're going to have some fun with this. But guys, this is actually a really, really good fight night card to end the year. And I know that the final pay-per-view of the year is kind of the big hoorah, and then we kind of just get a fight night. I think this is a solid fight night, right? It was supposed to be Ian Gary versus Joaquin Buckley as the headliner. But lo and behold, who would have guessed Colby Covington being one of the guys who steps up and actually takes on a legit contender, a real contender in Joaquin Buckley, who I think is just the dark horse of the division. I think that Joaquin Buckley, you could put him in there with anyone in the division, and he is going to give them problems. So I got a lot to say about that matchup. I'll save that for when we break that down. I got a lot of thoughts on what's going on there, why Colby took the fight, so we'll get to that. But let's waste no more time, hop right into this, starting with our very first fight of the night between Josefine Knutsson and Piera Rodriguez. Now, for me, Josefine Knutsson, first of all, she's got a great camp, right? Over at All Stars Training Center, Khamzat Chimaev's trained there, Alexander Gustafsson. They have some very good fighters. Alir Latifi even spends some time there. So that's a good camp, right? Andreas Michael is the coach. She's got good coaching. And that's very, very important because when it comes to game planning and getting down to the nitty gritty, she's a prepared fighter. And that's one of the big reasons that she's 8-0. But for me, it's the striking, right? She comes onto the Contender Series. We get to see, her skill set so far, gets a win over Verbeek, then comes out here, gets the win over Mann, and then gets a win over Juliana Palastri in her most recent outing, and a lot of decision wins, right? So that is a little bit alarming when you're going to pick somebody. But I think with Josefine, it's the striking, it's the footwork, it's the timing, it's the speed. And when I watch her, she's just got the skills that you're looking for in this division to cause a lot of problems inside, the strawweight division here. And then she's going in there against Piera Rodriguez, right? And for me, Piera Rodriguez is going to want no parts of Josefine on the feet. I think she's going to come in with a grapple-heavy game plan. And she's someone that kind of started off pretty well, right? She comes in off the Contender Series, gets a decision win, goes out there against Hansen, another decision win, Sam Hughes, another decision win, couple of decision merchants, right? But then this is where things kind of took a little bit of a turn. She loses to Juliana Robertson, and some people might look at this and go, oh, I can't pick her because of that. But for me, Jillian Robertson, that's kind of a hard matchup, right? She's got pretty good grappling. She, puts her in an armbar, nasty submission game. Jillian Robertson's well coached, right? Got Dean Thomas helping her out. She's a good fighter. So to me, not a big deal there. And then we get the DQ on her last fight, intentional headbutts. Weird situation there. But for me, very, very cut and dry kind of matchup. Josephine's going to want this fight on the feet to where she can let the combinations fly. And Piera Rodriguez, not to say that she can't have some success on the feet, but I think she's going to come into this with a grapple-heavy game plan. But for me, I just can't trust what I've seen from Piera Rodriguez in those last couple outings. And for me, it's just what Josephine's going to do. She's got a good camp behind her. She's got good footwork. She's got very good striking, kickboxing background. She's outstanding. I like watching her fight. I think she's got a good flow to her and the way she strings the combinations together. I think that she gets this one done by decision. Maybe she could get a finish, but I'm going to go with decision here considering what we've seen from both of them. Like I said, some decision merchants. So I think a finish would be a little bit bold. Not off the table, but I think Josephine gets this one done. Moving on. We have Davey Grant versus Ramon Taveras. Now, this is an interesting fight, right? And I see the Tapology community predictions as of now. Taveras, 66% think Taveras is going to win. And to me, that's interesting because with Ramon Taveras, there's been some alarming things from this guy for me, right? And I know when you see this, you're like, oh, wow. He's won 4 out of his last 5. But, he comes in here, he's still on the local pro scene, comes into on the Contender Series, he gets finished, right? And to me, whenever you get finished on the Contender Series, that's what Dana says is the big job interview, right? This big moment. And what I like is when a guy or girl or whoever comes on the Contender Series, it doesn't go their way, right? It's easy when everything goes your way. But when you suffer a finish loss in particular, what's not like a close decision or anything, you get finished, right? That's embarrassing. Everything that you've worked for, well, I don't think it's that embarrassing, but to them, it's embarrassing. Everything you work for, and Ramon goes out there and gets finished, comes back to the Contender Series, gets another opportunity, and then gets a finish. I mean, that right there tells you a lot about a guy's character is, not just saying, this is it, man. I blew my opportunity. I'm done. I don't know what to do from here. He said, no, I'm going to get back in there, and I'm going to get back after this. And then he goes out there in his UFC shot here and wins a split decision. Now, the thing for me with Ramon Taveras, he's got good power, right? He's got good boxing. He's got good striking, and he's a fun guy to watch, right? And he's got, like I said, he's got good power, and he's a slugger. And if he connects, he can really hurt you. He can cause a lot of damage, and he can possibly get you out of there. But what makes me nervous in this fight is whenever we see someone that's kind of green inside of the UFC, there's questions, right? He looked, it's a split decision win, and yeah, he's getting a KO on the Contender Series. Davey Grant is a big step up in competition here, and I know Davey Grant isn't looked at as a world beater. He's a tricky bantamweight. He's got pretty good striking on the feet. I mean, you look at his resume here. He's losing by decision to Marlon Vera, loses to Adrian Yanez by split decision. That was a good fight. Goes out there, KOs Luis Smolka. Goes out there, gets a submission over Rafael Sunsao, and his most recent loss to Daniel Marcos, split decision. Some people thought Davey Grant won the fight, and Marcos, he's been spectacular. He's been a very, very good fighter, and he's on this card as well, I believe. So, Davey Grant, tricky guy, good kicks, good striking. I just think, he's getting up there in age, right? He's 38 years of age, and I think Davey Grant, he's one of those guys where he's kind of back and forth, where he has these close fights. But I think the X factor for me in this fight is the fact that Ramon Taveras, he's got nasty power. I think he's young, he's 30 years of age. He's excited to be in the UFC, where Davey Grant's just kind of been around and he's given some guys some tough fights. But I really do see a scenario to where Davey Grant can kind of pick him apart, utilize the kicks, and frustrate Taveras and get a win. But I'm ultimately going to go with Ramon Taveras here. I think that his boxing, his power, and his hungriness of being new to the UFC is going to be a little bit much for Davey Grant in this matchup. It's not to say Davey can't win this fight. I absolutely think that this, to me, is a little bit of a toss-up, because I think Davey Grant is a tricky opponent, and this, like I said, is a nice step up in competition for Taveras. But for me, he's a young guy. The UFC, I think, is looking for someone new in the bantamweight division to get, that's outside of it. We got a loaded division. He's a guy that's exciting. He's got a fun style. This is, to me, like the UFC saying, look, we're going to throw you in there with a striker. Show us what you can do. Davey Grant does have a well-rounded skill set, predominantly a striker. I think Ramon Taveras' power is what separates him from the other guys that Davey Grant has fought. If Ramon lands, he can cause some serious problems. But again, if he can't get Davey Grant out of there, I think he's going to get outpointed. So to me, Taveras has to get a finish to win this fight, in my opinion. Moving on. We have Miranda Maverick versus Jamey-Lyn Horth. Now, Horth, someone that's came into the UFC, she's 7-1. She's been a pretty good fighter, right? Coming over from LFA, makes her debut here. Gets the decision win, goes out there against Veronica Hardy, loses by split decision. Now, anytime Veronica Hardy's fighting, it's gonna be a close fight. It's gonna be a split decision. It's gonna be a close decision. It just seems, because Veronica Hardy, she's well-rounded. She's got Dan Hardy in her corner. She's got high fight IQ. She's trying to be super strategic in the way that she approaches fights. So to lose that fight, I mean, I don't look at that too bad here, because I think Veronica Hardy, she's a decision merchant, and you can get outpointed and by Veronica Hardy. She's got good activity. And then the most recent outing, getting a split decision win over Ivana Petrovic, just not super impressive, right? So a couple split decision, fights here. But for me, this has to do a lot with Miranda Maverick. And I think Jamey-Lyn Horth, she's a solid fighter, pretty good grappling, pretty good striking. But this is what Miranda Maverick is going to do that Jamey-Lyn Horth is not going to do. And Miranda Maverick, she's someone that I've been watching actually before she even got to the UFC. I saw her fight live at Shogun Fights, a number of years ago. And when you see her, I mean, the girl's jacked, right? She's absolutely shredded. She's in fantastic condition. And what comes with that, she's very strong. She's aggressive. She has outstanding footwork. She's very, very athletic. And like I said, very physically strong and still very young in the game at 27 years of age. And if you look at some of these wins here, gets the decision win over Young, goes out there against Jasmine Judavicius, loses by decision. Jasmine Judavicius is a good fighter. Goes out there, gets the submission win over Priscilla, decision win over Andrea Lee, decision win over Dion Barbosa. You know, pretty good resume. And then everyone looks at that Macy Barber fight, and there's people out there that thought Miranda could have won that fight. So close fight with, with Macy Barber. Miranda Maverick, to me, is the full package. She's got good striking, good footwork, good movement. I think the grappling that she brings to the table is going to be a problem, and she's going to be faster and stronger than Jamey-Lyn Horth. I just don't see how Jamey-Lyn wins this fight. I think Miranda Maverick is very, very good in this division. I think she's well-rounded. I like watching her fight. I got Miranda Maverick getting this one done. Moving on to Miles Johns versus Felipe Lima. This is an interesting fight here, and I'm looking at the community predictions, and I see that. So, with Felipe Lima, right, fun guy coming over, from Octagon here. That's a solid promotion, right? They got some good fighters over there. Then he comes over to the UFC, makes his debut against Muhammad Naimov. And submission, rear naked choke. Very, very impressive performance inside of his debut. But what you're going to see with Felipe Lima is a very, very well-rounded fighter. Good striking on the feet, very dynamic. He's got good grappling of his own and very, very, very good submissions. So whenever you're dealing with someone like Lima who has the ability to hurt you on the feet, who has the ability to win in the striking, but has nasty submissions and grappling in their back pocket, it just does something to you mentally. So I look for Miles Johns to be on high alert. I think Felipe Lima is a real problem on the rise here in the featherweight division. And then on the other side, you have Miles Johns, right? A guy going out there, getting subbed by John Castaneda, goes out there, beats Vince Morales by decision. Then we have the decision win over Dan Argueta, beats Cody Gibson by decision, and then coming off a decision win over Douglas Silva de Andrade. So Miles Johns, I believe, was supposed to fight Cody Garbrandt, right? So he's kind of been preparing for fights, and, it's been getting canceled, and, so it's been kind of a little bit of a frustrating time for Miles Johns. So I think that he's going to have some pent-up frustration coming into this fight. The issue I have with Miles coming into this fight, he's a guy that kind of was like grapple heavy, and now he's kind of like striking heavy, and he kind of mixes some things up. And I think he's going to find himself in some trouble because I think on the feet, Felipe's going to be fast. He's going to be very dynamic to where he can really, cause some issues for Miles Johns on the feet. And then it's the X factor of the submission threat to where if Miles Johns does try to entertain some of the grappling, I do believe Felipe Lima is going to be able to find a submission here. Again, another fighter coming out of All Stars Training Center. They breed, not breed, but they have some absolutely spectacular fighters coming out of that gym. I'm going to go Felipe Lima by submission here, and I think it happens in the second round. I think it's pretty close in the first round. Lima landing some good shots. Maybe Miles Johns, gets a takedown here or there, but eventually he's going to go back to the corner, and, his coaches are going to say, look, we saw this, we saw that, and then you're going to see Lima come out and exploit whatever that was that his coaches saw, and then we're going to see Felipe Lima find a submission. So again, very, very dangerous prospect in Felipe Lima. I just think he's that damn good. Miles Johns, again, don't sleep on him. He's a solid fighter. He's really developed a well-rounded game. He's got some pretty good power. Likes to, kind of swing some big shots in there. This is a great matchup like this fight, but I think Felipe Lima's submission threat is going to be the difference here. Moving on. This is a funky matchup. This is a fun one. Two awkwardly built gentlemen here with Sean Woodson, the St. Louis Sniper, and Fernando Padilla. So for me, I really like Sean Woodson. He's actually one of the guys that, out of unranked fighters, he's one of my favorites. I think Sean Woodson, the St. Louis Sniper, man, I love watching this guy fight. He's got a very, very awkward striking style, and believe it or not, he used to be a heavyweight boxer, right? So if you've ever seen those throwback pictures, it doesn't really even look like him, right? So I was like, is this actually him or not? He, to come back, really dial himself in with the diet and find a way to be 6'2" in the featherweight division is absolutely crazy. And then on the other side, you have Fernando Padilla. He's 6'1", so two big guys inside the featherweight division. But for me, you look at Fernando Padilla, right? Goes in there, gets a split decision whenever Nate Richardson, in LFA. Then he goes over to Fury, gets a finish. Now he gets to the UFC. Goes in there against Julian Erosa. This was impressive, right? Goes in there and gets a finish. And I'm like, comes in, finishes Julian Erosa. I'm like, that's spectacular, right? So I was that's what caught my eye, right? I'm like, that's a big win to make here. And then you go out there against Guram Kutaladze's doppelganger and Kyle Nelson, and you lose by decision. But again, Look how that's kind of aged, right? Kyle Nelson, he's a guy that's kind of figured it out over about the past year. So not a terrible loss right there. And then he goes out there and gets a submission win over Luis, via Darce. I mean, that's a good win, right? But for me, what this comes down to is Sean Woodson. He's a tricky opponent, man. He's tall. He's got long limbs. But he has a 78-inch reach inside this division. And again, Fernando Padilla right behind him, 76-inch reach. So one of the things with Woodson, he is used to weaponizing that long range. He's got an outstanding jab. He's got very, very good boxing. He does a lot of, distracting type of, almost like street fighting tactics. He does, looks up like he's playing basketball. He's going to shoot a jumper and then he'll throw a shot. Like he's got a very, very, unique fighting style. But over his past, few fights here, gets a finish over Colin Angle. I mean, that was a spectacular. The way he mixes it up, the way, he's got very high fight IQ. He's got that boxer's, brain when it comes to finding the shots to the body and then working back upstairs. Goes out there, gets a split decision over Luis Saldana. That, to me, not my favorite performance by Sean Woodson. Goes out there, picks apart Dennis Bazukia for a decision. Goes out there, beats Charles Jourdain by decision. That's kind of close, right? And I know Charles Jourdain, he's a fun fighter. He's got a dangerous flying knee, some good grappling, some solid submissions, and he's quick. He's a solid fighter. But again, Charles Jourdain, he's changed weight classes. So to me, that's a little froggy there. But then this performance right here against Alex Caceres, this was a good performance by Woodson, and you really got to see, Caceres is an awkward striker. They call him Bruce Leroy, I think, right? He's in there thinking he's Bruce Lee, bouncing in and out, karate style. He's got some, tricky techniques up his sleeve. But to me, Sean Woodson, the way that he approaches fights, he's got outstanding boxing. He has really good takedown defense, because I don't think Fernando Padilla is just going to want to stand in front of Sean Woodson for 15 minutes. I think he's going to try to level change. The problem is Sean Woodson has good takedown defense. He's a hard guy to get to the floor, and if you do get him down, he finds a way to use that awkward frame to get back to the feet. I think that his striking is fast. His variety is very good. He can switch stances, keep you guessing. I think the St. Louis Sniper is able to get this one done. I'm going to go by decision, right? We do see some finishes from time to time from Woodson. Fernando Padilla, pretty solid fighter. Again, he's got the range to match Woodson and give him some issues, but I still think Sean Woodson is the better fighter and the better striker, and I think the speed in his hands is going to be the difference to where he's just going to pick Fernando Padilla apart. Moving on. We have Drakkar Klose versus Joe Alvarez. Now, this is a fight that you want to make sure your ass is in your seat for, because someone's getting finished, right? This is one of those fights where I don't want to jinx it, but I would be betting that someone, if someone was like, hey, what fight is probably going to end in a finish? I'd be shocked if this goes the distance, because I think Joe Alvarez is one of the most dangerous prospects on the rise inside of the lightweight division. He goes out there, gets a nasty armbar over Alexander, then goes out there against Thiago Moises. This was the fight that had me going, okay, this dude's for real, because Thiago Moises, he's a guy that's not really a contender, but he's a solid opponent, right? And a lot of the guys that have, made their way inside the lightweight division, they got to get through Thiago Moises, right? Some of the, you look at Islam Makhachev, some of these guys that have fought him and have went on to become, special fighters in the division. So this was a great performance. And then he goes out there and gets finished by Arman Tsarukyan. Now, again, that's Arman. That's one of the most elite fighters in the lightweight division. Incredibly well-rounded, good power, good wrestling, good takedowns, and great ground and pound. Hard matchup for Joe Alvarez. Then he goes out there against Mark Casey, wins by Darce. And then the most recent performance, this is the one that had me going, all right, man, we got a dude right here, Joe Alvarez, was this finish over Elvis Brenner. This was if you would have told me that Joe Alvarez, I picked him to win this fight, I didn't think it was going to be a one-sided ass whooping. Joe Alvarez looks spectacular. He's tall for the weight class. What is he, 6'3"? Yeah, 6'3", 77-inch reach, tall, long, rangy guy. And he's got all the skills. He's got the power. He's got the striking. He has outstanding submissions. There's two things that bother me about Joe Alvarez. One, he doesn't move his damn head, and he is susceptible to some of the wrestling. So you can land shots on him down the pipe, and you can exploit the wrestling, but you got to be careful because of the submissions. Number two, he's got to make the weight, right? That's been almost the big battle and the big kind of asterisk with Joe Alvarez is it seems like he struggles to make the weight. So that's going to be a question coming into this, but he's dangerous. He's got great finishing ability, and he's going in there against a guy in Drakkar Klose who looks down here like a lot of people, they're writing off Drakkar Klose, and you can't do that, right? Drakkar Klose, He's 36 years of age, but, outside of this loss to Benny Dariush, I know the guy looks like he's 60, but Dariush is a good fighter, right? He's got good submissions. He does have good power in his hands. Goes out there, takes some time, comes back, beats Brandon Jenkins by finish. Goes out there against Rafa Garcia, wins a decision. Then goes out there against Joe Solecki, nasty KO. The way he slammed him, Batista bombed him to get the victory. And then most recently over Joaquin Silva, goes out there, beats him by decision. Pretty solid wins from Drakkar Klose. But for me, this is a banger, right? Drakkar Klose, great power, good boxing. He's got, good takedowns of his own, pretty good grappling, but I don't think it's enough. I don't think his grappling is enough to trouble Joe Alvarez, to where the guys that do have good wrestling, like an Ottman, they can control him, they can kind of negate the submissions. And on the feet, it's possible that Drakkar can land some good shots. So I'm not ruling him out of this fight, but I think Joe Alvarez is for real. I think that he is just, in terms of this division, he is a dangerous dude when he can make the weight, when he's dialed in. He's aggressive, he pushes the pace, and if you decide to take him down, you got to be very careful because of the submission threat. But what I see here, I see him hurting Drakkar Klose on the feet, kind of like what we saw from Alvarez against Brenner. Clips him with a shot on the feet, follows him to the floor, and is able to find a submission. I think we have a pretty good first round where Alvarez kind of starts to make his reads, and in the second round, lands a shot and is able to then find a submission over Klose. I'm going Joe Alvarez. Moving on to Michael Johnson versus Ottman. Now, Michael Johnson, we got to talk about him for a second. Michael Johnson is one of the strangest fighters in the history of all combat. Michael Johnson is liable to go out there, lose 5 fights in a row to guys that we have never heard of, that literally get cut from the UFC after the next fight, and he's liable to go out there and get teed off and KO'd by those guys, and then come back in the very next fight and knock out the champion. Like, that has literally been Michael Johnson's career, it seems, and, 22 and 19, he's got a lot of experience, he's a fun striker, he's got good grappling, and he's a guy that can mix it up, right? Good camp at Killcliff FC, great training partners, getting up there in age. So that's something that we're going to have to watch. But for me, this is, when you look at Ottman, right? So he comes over to the UFC, debut, gets a good overhand right win here. This was impressive. Then goes out there, another finish over Kama-Worthy. But who are these opponents, right? I mean, so again, Kama-Worthy, kind of chinny, right? So not you're getting a finish that's impressive, but how, I don't know there. Then you go out there against Matt Frevola, you're getting finished. And I think Matt Frevola, he's a good fighter. He's fun to watch. He's a fan-friendly kind of fighter, but he's not, an elite guy. But again, he you could make the argument that Frevola and Michael Johnson, like if they fought right now, that would be a pretty interesting fight. So I don't know how bad that one is. And then you go out there and get finished by Francisco Prada. So back-to-back finish losses here for Ottman. And then with Michael Johnson, right, goes out there. He's been very, very active for a guy that's getting up there in age. Alan Patrick gets the finish, then loses to Jamey-Lyn by a split decision. Not a great look. I know Jamey-Lyn's kind of decent, but I don't know. I expected a little more from Michael in that fight. Goes out there against Mark Jacasey. I was at this fight. Wins by decision. Was able to pick him apart. Goes out there against Diego Ferreira. Gets absolutely starched with an overhand right. And then Darius Flowers, he goes out there against him and finds a way to win, by decision. Just kind of picks him apart and mixes everything together. That's what we've seen from Michael Johnson. As he's gotten a little bit older, he's very susceptible to be getting hit by a giant overhand right. That seems to be the shot that puts him out. We saw that, when he fought Josh Evett. So that is the shot that has kind of plagued Michael Johnson over, throughout his career here. But I really think that Michael Johnson's speed, experience, and just the way that he kind of flows, if he shows up, and we see that, very good style of Michael Johnson that's light on his feet, landing good boxing combinations, mixing in some kicks, maybe mixing in a little grappling, I think that Michael Johnson can actually get this done. And I know that, Ottman, he's a good fighter, pretty well-rounded, and he does have good power. So that does concern me for Michael Johnson a little bit, but I think Johnson's more technical. I think he's faster, and I think he will use the speed to his advantage. I got Michael Johnson getting this one done. Moving on. We have Navajo Stirling versus Tukos. I believe I pronounced that right. I'm interested in this fight. And the reason I'm interested in this fight is because I really like Navajo Stirling. This is a guy I'm very high on coming out of City Kickboxing. And from what you've seen recently from him, he goes out there off the Contender Series. This is going to be his first fight inside the UFC. This was I mean, it was an impressive win over Philip Lato, don't get me wrong, but we saw some things with Navajo Stirling that are a little bit alarming to me, right? And that was the fact that he is very susceptible to being hit. For a guy that's very tall for the weight class, coming in at light heavyweight, he's 6'4", 82-inch reach. That's good, right? And he kind of, the frame and the style, very much like Carlos Ulberg, who's currently in the division. They're training partners both at City Kickboxing. And this is going to be his first test, right? Because Tuco, he's a guy who's coming in here inside the UFC, and oh wow, I thought that he had a couple fights in the UFC. So again, his most recent outing loses by submission to Umar Sy. So again, he was back on road to the UFC. That's where I got confused. But with Tuco, he's a grapple heavy guy. He's got good grappling, good wrestling, and this is going to be the first time that we've seen Navajo Stirling's grappling tested, unless he lands some crazy fight or shot at the beginning of the fight and gets him out of there, and we don't even get to see that at all. But this is a little interesting to me, right? And I do think Navajo Stirling is able to win the fight, and I'm going to pick him by finish inside the second round. But don't get me wrong, I'm a little nervous here, right? I do think Navajo Stirling wins the fight, and I do feel confident in that. But whenever we see somebody who has never been tested in terms of the grappling, and they're this exciting prospect who's got, all these striking accolades because he was a kickboxing champion, and he's done all these things in kickboxing, I get nervous when we haven't seen you inside a fight. We can hear all the stories. We know you're at City Kickboxing, Alberg, Adesanya, Hooker, Kai Kara France, those guys have outstanding takedown defense. So we know that they have that style to kind of defend against grapple-heavy opponents. I don't think Tuco is that good of an opponent. I think that this is, someone the UFC is trying to feed him to kind of see where his grappling is at. I do believe that he defends the takedowns, gets to range, and is able to find a finish in this matchup. That's what this is designed for, is to get Navajo Stirling a finish and get him some experience against a grappler. I think he's able to find a way to get this one done. And with a few more wins, Navajo Stirling, he's going to find himself, I think, closing in on a ranked opponent and kind of making his way up the light heavyweight division, because he's gotten a fun style, fights exactly kind of like Carlos Ulberg and Izzy and those guys with, the good feints, good movement, good front kicks, good leg kicks, beautiful jab. He's fun to watch. I think he's able to get this one done by finish. Again, makes me nervous considering we haven't seen him against a grapple-heavy opponent yet. So, moving on. We have Daniel Marcos versus Adrian Yanez. Now, I've went back and forth on this one because I think that Adrian Yanez, he's a guy, look, over his past few fights, goes out there, split decision over Davey Grant. A tricky vet in Davey Grant, goes out there, finishes Tony Kelly. This was kind of the performance that put Adrian Yanez out there, right? He already was attracting attention, outstanding boxing, fun to watch, good striking, and, he was drawing comparisons to Jorge Masvidal. I never really understood that, right? I think that they have very different styles where Masvidal does have good boxing. Maybe that's where they were getting that from, but Masvidal's he's got great kicks, more of a Muay Thai kind of guy, so I didn't really understand that. But this was the fight where you got to really see outstanding boxing by Adrian Yanez. Even when he was in there against Randy Costa, he was getting picked apart, but then eventually he was able to find a KO. So the UFC said, great performance over Tony Kelly in front of a crowd in Texas. We're going to throw you in there on a pay-per-view against Rob Font. We're going to put you on the main card. I thought Adrian Yanez was going to be able to go in there and get this done. And what you saw was, the slick vet in Rob Font, who has really good boxing, a very good job, was patient, a very good jab, was very patient, was able to kind of bring Adrian into some of those, close quarters, exchanges, and was able to ultimately get him out of there. So maybe too much, too soon for Adrian. Then he comes back against Jonathan Martinez. Jonathan, I've said before, solid fighter, durable as hell. He's a leg kick spammer. If you can take away the leg kicks and turn it into a boxing match, you can find a way to get through Jonathan Martinez. We just saw that with Marcus McGee. But again, a couple leg kicks and you're going to find yourself in trouble because, again, he was able to finish Yanez with some leg kicks. And then his most recent outing was against a flyweight coming up to bantamweight and Vinicius Salvador. Crazy power advantage for Adrian Yanez. To me, this was just they were feeding Salvador to Adrian to get him back in the win column. Great boxing, really good movement, great footwork. He kind of looks like a pro boxer in there, does Yanez. But to me, Daniel Marcos is an interesting guy coming into this. He's undefeated. He's really been on a tear. And for me, it's the improvements that we've seen. Gets the decision win on the Contender Series, makes his debut in the UFC. gets a finish. Nasty knees to the body, goes out there, split decision over Davey Grant. I mean, Davey Grant, he takes it to these prospects, man. He never allows them to just get an easy win. Then the unintentional groin strike, goes out there, gets a decision win over John Castaneda. But the thing with Daniel Marcos, he's made outstanding improvements. He's a guy that continues to level up as time progresses. Every time we see him fight, I feel like there's something new that he brings to the table. And I think that he has the skill set to cause some issues for Adrian. And one of the things that I don't like about Yanez, as good as his boxing is, he gets picked apart by the straight shots down the middle, especially the jab. Rob Font was landing, at will with the jab. And then Randy Costa, even in that fight, he was picking Yanez apart with that nasty jab. So to me, I believe that Daniel Marcos can come into this fight and implement a similar game plan to what we've seen Davey Grant weaponize, even though Yanez was able to get through him. Marcos can mix in the kicks, similar to what Jonathan Martinez did. Again, not the same kicker as Martinez, but he has the variety to be able to throw the kicks. He has the strong or the straight punches down the middle that I think he's going to be able to use to he's not just going to sit there and box with Yanez. So what do you do to take away, a good boxer in MMA? Attack the lead leg, throw kicks, keep him guessing, mix up the stances, mix everything together. I believe that Daniel Marcos is the more complete fighter. I think that Yanez is definitely the better boxer, and I think that he does have more power, but it's the variety of Daniel Marcos that he's going to bring to the table. I think that he's able to land the more significant shots. He's able to pick his opportunities, and I think that he wins a decision over Adrian in this matchup. Moving on. We have Dustin Jacoby versus Vitor Petrino. This is an interesting fight to me because Vitor Petrino, this was a guy that bursted onto the scene, right? Nasty win over, decision win, but he landed some good shots against Anton Turkalj, goes in there, gets a submission over Marcin Prokhnio. He's kind of a tricky matchup, karate-based guy. Gets the finish over Modestas Volkauskas. That's a big dude. Goes in there, gets a decision win over Tyson Pedro. To me, that was a lackadaisical performance by Vitor. He wasn't very aggressive. He was showing way too much respect to a guy, Tyson Pedro, who I believe retired right after the fight. So, he was in kind of an interesting headspace coming into the fight, knowing it was probably his last time that he was making the walk. And Vitor Petrino wasn't very aggressive, right? He's a big, strong guy for the weight class. Then he goes out there against Anthony Smith, which I think the UFC, this was in Brazil. They were trying to give him a name and help him get a win here. He goes out there and gets subbed early in the fight by Anthony Smith. So again, Anthony Smith, good submission, solid fighter, but kind of over the hill at this point in Anthony Smith. So this was a bad loss by Vitor Petrino, and he's a big guy for the weight class. He's still young, 27 years of age, crazy power. He's going in there against Dustin Jacoby, a guy who lost to Khalil Roundtree by split decision. I thought Jacoby won the fight. He's got good striking, former Glory kickboxer, very diverse, can switch stances, throw kicks, good timing in terms of the boxing. Goes out there, loses to Azmat Mirzakhanov. That dude's a dog inside the division, so I don't hold anything against him there. Goes out there, gets a finish over Kennedy and Zechku, who ever since moved up to heavyweight, Kennedy's looked pretty good. And then he goes out there, loses to Menefield by decision. That was a close fight again, right? So Jacoby been in a lot of close fights where some of these decisions possibly could have went the other way. He was landing really good shots and picking Menefield apart, but Menefield was landing the bigger, nastier shots that I think that's what the judges saw. And then he goes out there and gets starched by Dominic Reyes. He was the sacrifice for the MMA community to get Dominic Reyes back in the win column. Reyes is now rattled off 2 in a row with a win over Jacoby and now Smith. But to me, this is very cut and dry. Dustin Jacoby, he's a striker through and through. He's not really going to look to grapple much. He's got good speed. He's got good timing. And I think that he is the better overall striker coming into this matchup. But for me, it's the power of Vitor Petrino, but also the grappling and submission threat that Vitor provides here, to where if Jacoby doesn't exactly have the power to really put Vitor in a ton of danger on the feet, and then I think Vitor can close the gap, get a hold of him, take him down, and then ultimately find some sort of submission or some sort of finish. But to me, he's going to hurt Dustin Jacoby on the feet. Maybe he takes him down, landing some good ground and pound, and the ref comes in and stops it. I think that Jacoby's going to be sticking and moving early on. He's going to be cautious coming off of a KO loss. But I think Petrino, it's just going to be a matter of time until he finds the chin and lands that good shot. He's going to be pissed off to get back in the win column after losing to Anthony Smith. I think he's going to be a little bit embarrassed coming off of that. I think we see a aggressive and scary Vitor Petrino come fight night. I think he's able to get a finish. Moving on, Manel Kape versus Bruno Silva. I like this fight a lot, right? Inside the flyweight division, it gets a lot of hate, right? A lot of people are like, oh, these guys are boring. We see a lot of decisions and this and that. What we see in the flyweight division is, right, everyone's just kind of chasing Pantoja. Pantoja is, one of the most underrated fighters in UFC history. He's just running through everybody. And then he's like, you want to fight me again? I'll beat you again. So he's just kind of lapping the division. But we're looking for contenders. And when you look at Bruno Silva, this is a guy that's got it, right? He's got good striking. He's a well-rounded fighter. Goes out there, loses to Tigre there, goes out there, gets a KO win over JP Bays. That was very impressive. Goes out there against Victor Rodriguez, another finish. Goes out there, finishes Tyson Nam by rear naked choke. Beautiful submission there. And then goes out and gets a finish over Cody Durden. What was the pattern that you notice? A ton of finishes by Bruno Silva. That's exciting because one of the big complaints about flyweight, we don't get finishes. It's too boring. Guys aren't exciting enough. And he's training at Fight Ready, so he's got a good camp out there. They're going to have him prepared. But on the other side, you got Starboy, Manel Kape, who I think is one of the most technical and one of the best strikers that we've had in the flyweight division when he shows up and when he decides to open up a little bit. Nasty finish over O'Day Osborne. Goes out there, nasty finish here. Goes out, wins by decision. Another decision win, most recent outing against Muhammad Mukayev. I believe that Mukayev, a guy who the UFC didn't re-sign, he'll find his way back into the UFC and he will find himself in a title opportunity very soon. And Mukayev, his striking's improved. And what you saw in that fight, Manel Kape got hurt, right? He banged up his toe. And if you hurt, I believe it was his big toe, that's your planting and pivoting. I mean, that you break your big toe and you're going to be in some trouble. You can't push off the same way. So that, to me, kind of hindered the ability of Manel in that fight. And again, Mukayev, to me, he's a title challenger. He is one of the best flyweights in the world. He's got outstanding wrestling, good submissions, and overall, he's improved everywhere. So that is not a bad loss from Manel Kape. But to me, it's going to be the technicalities and the speed and the fight IQ of Manel Kape that's going to win him this fight. Because I think Bruno Silva, he's used to finishing everybody. He comes forward, he's aggressive, he gets in your face, and he wants to knock you out, throws big shots. I think Manel Kape is the perfect guy to solve that riddle. I think that he's got the technicalities. He's got a very, very good camp over at Extreme Couture, Eric Nixick, those guys. He's spectacular. And they're going to have Manel Kape ready. They're going to have him prepared. And Manel Kape, he's a fiery guy, right? Leading up to the Mukayev fight, there was some bad blood. They were, kind of going at it to where I think the nerves were there. And it's like, I don't want to lose. I don't want to get subbed. I don't want to get made look like a fool. He's going to come out relaxed. I think he's going to come out with a point to prove. I think that Manel Kape is the more skilled fighter here. I think his speed, his technicalities are going to be too much for Bruno Silva in this matchup. But again, if Silva lands, it could be a problem. So I'm going to go Manel Kape by decision. I think he picks apart Bruno Silva. He mixes up the striking, mixes up the stance, the footwork. I think Manel Kape gets this one done. Moving on, what you saw there. This is a good fight, right? So, you got Cub Swanson versus Billy Quarantillo. You already saw the result. I think Cub Swanson wins this fight. And this is a good back and forth. To me, this is a pick'em. And I see down here, we got kind of a close thing here. Look, Billy Quarantillo is a good fighter. He's got good grappling. He's got good pace. He's got good volume. And to me, that's how he wins the fight. Chaining everything together, the grappling, the striking, just throwing a lot at Cub Swanson. And because the one thing about Cub, he throws big shots and he's got good power and he's got a fun style, but he gets behind the scorecards in terms of the volume. He will get outstruck and you can land a lot of volume on Cub Swanson. But you look at Quarantillo, loses to Shane Burgos. Burgos, maybe kind of a similar style to Swanson, right? Pretty good boxing. He's kind of got that, brawler type of style when he gets into the pocket. Goes out there, gets a win over Alexander Hernandez, okay. Loses to Edson Barboza. Gets finished there. Goes out, gets a decision win over Damon Jackson. Loses to Yusuf Zalal by submission. Yusuf Zalal is a monster in this division. One of the most underrated guys. He's a problem. Cub Swanson, over the past few years, gets finished by Giga Chikadze. That's a dangerous striker. Goes out there, beats Darren Elkins. Loses to Jonathan Martinez. One of the leg kick TKO victims was Cub Swanson. Goes out there, gets a decision win over Hakeem Dawodu, and then loses by split decision to Andre Fili. So the problem with Cub has been he loses these decisions, or he's barely been winning them. And the reason that he wins or loses them is because if he wins, he's landing more damage, but he's still getting outstruck, right? Because he doesn't put out a ton of volume. And then if he loses, he lands good damage, but the other guys just completely blow him away in terms terms of the volume. So to me, Billy Quarantillo, he likes to move forward. He likes to try to get in the pocket. He's in front of, his fans here in Tampa, Florida. I think this is kind of set up for Billy Quarantillo to get this one done. But if Cub Swanson can get a victory here, which I think he can, because I think Billy Quarantillo, he's going to have volume on his side. He's going to have the grappling on his side. I just don't know if it's good enough to trouble Cub Swanson. And I know Swanson's 41 years of age, and, Quarantillo, not a spring chicken either at 36. But I think the power of Cub Swanson, when Quarantillo, what we've seen, guys with power can cause Quarantillo some issues. I'm going to actually go with the underdog here in Cub Swanson. I know you might not agree with that, but I think Cub Swanson's power is going to be a little bit of an issue for Billy Q. And that's what we've seen with Billy, is guys that have power can cause him some issues. But I do think Cub will get outstruck. Volume will be a problem, but I think the damage and the power of Cub Swanson, I think he's going to be able to find a shot and get Billy Q out of there. But again, if Cub doesn't get a finish, I think Billy Q maybe he can find a finish, but I think that he'll probably win by decision. But I think Cub Swanson is able to get this one done, and then maybe he could go out there against Doohoo Choi in a crazy rematch, because we just saw Choi look crazy good against Nate Landwehr. Finally, we get to the main event between Colby Covington and Joaquin Buckley. When this fight got announced, I was shocked. I was blown away. And the first thing that came to my mind is, wow, I'm shocked Colby Covington. He's actually fighting a contender. When the hell's the last time we've seen Colby Covington fight an actual contender inside the division? He's been gifted opportunities, been gifted title shots. And let's be real. Colby Covington, he had an impressive win to win the interim title over Rafael Dos Anjos. But it's really been his close fights with Kamaru Usman is really kind of what his name is attached to, right? And that's kind of what we think of when we think of Colby Covington. And then a guy that's just made his entire personality about Donald Trump, right? And it's like, I don't really have any issues with that. It's just, that's your whole personality? It's like, that's just kind of cringe to me. You're basically like a walking political figure inside of MMA. And to me, that's just weird to make your whole personality about that. But with Colby Covington, I was shocked he took this fight. And to me, this spells the UFC saying, no more gifts. We've given you too many. You need to go out there and earn another title opportunity if you want one. And Covington says, okay. And he takes on Buckley. And the reason for that, he knows if he fought Ian Gary and lost that fight, it'd be embarrassing. He talks so much shit about Ian Gary, and it kind of just, it became too big of a risk for Colby Covington, is my take on that. And he's going to have to fight a contender, right, to get himself in position, coming off of a abysmal performance against Leon Edwards. He says he broke his foot, so who knows? But that was not a good performance, right? Was gifted a title shot, goes out there, embarrassing loss to Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards should have finished him in that fight. Then he goes out before, he takes some time away. He beat Jorge Masvidal by decision in the grudge match, and it's like, okay, Masvidal is kind of over the hill at that point. Then he goes out there against Usman, loses by decision. Covington thought he won the fight. It was close, but I thought Usman won. Goes out there, finishes Tyron Woodley. Well, Woodley's like, my rib. So the fight stopped. And then, he lost to Kamaru Usman in their first meeting. So Colby hasn't been very active, right? He's got a crazy gas tank, crazy pace. He could throw a lot of volume at you like we saw him just melt Robbie Lawler. He could mix the takedowns together. Not a big guy for the weight class, right? He's kind of a smaller dude. He's got the wrestling background. He's an outstanding wrestler, whether you like the guy or not. He's relentless, and he mixes things together very well. The problem with Colby, he doesn't really have a way to finish the fight, right? He's got, this pace and pressure that could just get to you and make you tired. But how does he win this fight? That's the only way I see him beating Buckley. Buckley getting tired. Colby maybe can find some sort of, TKO stoppage late. I doubt it. I doubt he finds a submission. So it would be him winning a decision based on control time and Buckley just getting fatigued. But to me, Joaquin Buckley is one of the biggest problems in the welterweight division. He, ever since he's came down to welterweight, you've just seen a different guy from middleweight. He looked great at middleweight at times, right? He had that viral KO. He's a powerful guy, big dude for the weight class. Goes out there against Vicente Luque. This was really that moment to where we're like, okay, goes out there, dominates Vicente Luque to where it looks like Luque gave up. You saw what Vicente just did. Goes in there, decimates Themba Gorimbo. So maybe that's just Joaquin Buckley's is that good. Then goes out there, gets a decision win over Nursultan Ruziboev in St. Louis. Impressive performance. We saw Buckley mix into grappling, mix the striking together. And with Buckley, very explosive, very fast, got that peekaboo Mike Tyson style, crazy power, can, again, from middleweight down to welterweight, scary, crazy power. This is the biggest guy Colby Covington has probably ever fought. I know Usman's a big guy, and he's got good power, not like Buckley. Not like Buckley. I think Buckley's more dangerous with the striking. And then the impressive finish over Wonderboy Thompson. I actually picked Buckley to win this fight by finish. I thought that he was eventually going to just say, F it. And that's how I describe Buckley. These other guys come in with game plans, like, I'm going to stick and move, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Buckley's like, the hell with that. I'm just going to go in there and fight. If a takedown presents itself, I'll take it. If I got to move forward and just throw big shots and Mike Tyson peekaboo it up, I will. And that is what makes Joaquin Buckley so dangerous, is that if he lands, it's going to be a real problem. This is the biggest, most dangerous guy that Colby Covington has faced. Buckley's 30 years of age. He's been on an absolute tear ever since coming down to 170, and he's hungrier, right? Colby Covington's kind of got it made in the shade. He's training, at MMA Masters. He's got a good camp. He's, campaigning with Trump. He's doing all these like political things to where it seems like he's just distracted, and fighting has almost became a thing on the back burner here. And I believe that is never good when you're going in there against one of the most dangerous guys in the division. And that's why I think Buckley or Covington was like, I'll take this fight. There's really no static as of yet with Joaquin Buckley. So if he loses, I lost to a guy that's been on an absolute tear, a guy that was bigger than me. I can already hear the excuses coming from a mile away, or he'll blame the judges because they don't like Trump or whatever. That's what Colby's excuse will be. But I don't even think we get to that. That's if Buckley were to win by decision. I think Buckley finishes Colby Covington. I think that the power, the explosiveness, and the gas tank of Buckley, that's something a lot of people don't mention, is Joaquin Buckley has a very, very good gas tank down at 170, because at middleweight, you're not cutting as much weight. You can kind of get away with maybe not doing, some of those extra sprints or those extra miles, to where when you're actually cutting more and coming down to 170, your road work is going to be, you're going to be putting in the road work. You are going to be working on your conditioning. And coming into this fight, Buckley basically knows the only way I lose is if my conditioning is not good enough. But again, big guy coming down, sometimes one of the first things to go is that gas tank. So if Colby can put a pace on him and can stay safe defensively, I can see how he is able to find a way to win a decision with the grappling and the pace. I don't think it happens. I don't think he's that hungry anymore. He's been gifted a lot of opportunities. He's really basically ducked contenders, basically his entire career. He fights, guys that are towards the end of their career, then gets a title shot off of it. It's just been an absolute disgrace. He's gotten so many privileges since being inside the sport. He's a guy that's just got a cringe personality to me. Again, I don't have a problem that he likes Trump. Trump wants to bring world peace. I'm all for it, dog. Like, I'm all good for that. It's just the fact that your whole personality is about who's going to be the president of the United States. That's weird to me, right? You can support Trump. I mean, I like Trump. I just think that that's weird, that that's your whole personality. Like, you're a good wrestler, and to me, that's what you have to do in order to get people to tune in or actually support you, is attach yourself to a political figure. That's why I get annoyed with Colby Covington. I like his entrance, right? The Kurt Angle music, you suck. Like, I like that. I find it entertaining. It's in Florida. Says he's got some big walkout thing planned up his sleeve. Doesn't matter. I think he's getting finished. I think he's getting KO'd by Joaquin Buckley. Buckley's hungry, he's dangerous, and he's a real problem in this division. Again, Colby Covington's ducked contenders his entire career. Buckley's saying, give me the best guys you possibly have. He's signed to take on Ian Gary, an undefeated striker and a dangerous guy inside the division. You saw him go toe-to-toe with Shavkat Rakhmonov, the boogeyman. So again, Buckley, he's a savage, he's dangerous. I think he's able to get this one done by finish. But again, if we see a vintage Covington, Colby could maybe find a way to get a submission. I don't think we see it. I think fighting's kind of on the back burner. He's looking at probably becoming some sort of political figure or something at this point. I think Buckley is able to get this one done. And then at that point, that's a name to add to the resume of Buckley, to where he basically gets a number one contender fight, or possibly could find himself in a title shot here very soon. But if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you do not miss an upload. I would appreciate it. See you next time.